In the Hall of Justice, a tragedy has been uncovered. The heroes of Earth gather around the scene of the crime, staring at the murdered body of superpowered villain Dr. Destiny. Rushing into action, Superman radios ahead to his allies. Deadman warned Wonder Woman, Batman, and myself that it was a deadly nightmare construct, but manifests in the real world. But as he soars through the clouds, a psychic attack silently rings out across the entire planet. Dreams do come true. A horrible, wretched voice echoes into every mind simultaneously. What is that? Superman says, seeing in the distance a colossal wave of psychic energy cascading towards him, impossible to escape. As the wave crashed over the Man of Steel, his eyelids began to droop slowly. He struggled to stay aloft as suddenly exhaustion overtook his limbs. Within seconds, Superman was entrenched in a deep slumber, plummeting out of the sky as he snoozed. Smallville! A familiar voice erupted, awakening a confused Clark Kent with a start. He was back at the Daily Planet, and the office looked identical to when Clark had started there years earlier. Somewhere, a falling Superman mumbles in his sleep. Lois? If you don't hit that deadline, Mr. White is going to kill you, Lois lectured Clark absent-mindedly. But even as Clark watched, strange permeations began to take hold within his dreamscape. Jimmy Olsen became a robot. Lois was suddenly dressed in a cape and tights. When Perry White walked in with the newspaper in tow, Clark's dream began to stretch and distort horrifically around the edges. We did it, Perry told the bullpen, holding up the front page for all to see. Whole world saved forever, it read simply. Back in reality, nothing could be further from the truth. Superman's body had reached sea level and moments later would plunge into the icy depths of the sea. But within Clark's mind, suddenly Lois Lane was wearing a wedding dress. How? Clark asked, feeling extremely foggy and confused. Answering him, a chilling voice echoed out from across the hall. Because you finally listened to me, Kent, Lex Luthor told Clark as he walked through the office with a smile. You worked with me, and the world followed. They saw that I could help everyone. Now we're all safe. Clark's eyebrows shot up in surprise and worry. Lex, but you were... Suddenly, something clicked in the Man of Steel's mind. No, Clark said sternly. None of this is real. He began to put together the pieces swiftly, but not swiftly enough. At that moment, Superman's body splashed into the icy ocean waters. I was hoping we'd have more time before you'd figure it all out, Perry said slyly, causing Clark to whip around on him. What are you talking about? Clark asked. A siren began ringing throughout the office. Clark, Lois, and Jimmy all glanced out the window when their stomachs dropped. A massive tidal wave approached Metropolis at blazing speed. Back in the real world, Superman was sinking like a stone to the bottom of the ocean. While in his dreams, Clark was about to watch the city he loved be decimated by a power beyond his control. This is a job for, Clark began as he took off, ripping off his tie and preparing to reveal the costume beneath his work attire. Superman, Clark said weakly as he looked down and saw a gnarled S symbol carved into the flesh of his chest. As Superman's physical body began breathing in salt water, Lois and Jimmy turned to Clark and began melting before his eyes. You can't save us all, Lois struggled to say as tears welled in Clark's eyes. Lois! He screamed, but before he knew it, they were gone. It's just a dream. It's just a dream. It's just a dream, Clark told himself over and over again, trying to calm his nerves. Actually, a dark and terrible voice rang out from beside him. It's a nightmare, Superman. Perry White sneered at Clark, his smile twisted into a grimace. But I can help you wake up, he said as he reached up and pulled off his face, revealing the villain Insomnia beneath. Just tell me where the Nightmare Stone is, Insomnia demanded of Superman, dream energy crackling around his crystal blue eyes. Clark charged towards the man, hefting him by the shirt. Who are you? What have you done? He yelled, but Clark was playing by Insomnia's rules in the dream realm. This is just a dream. Why are you getting so emotional? Insomnia cackled. Clark's eyes narrowed further. I'm not worried about me. Are my friends and family also trapped in this nightmare? He asked. Insomnia threw Clark out of the window with one flick of his hand, crying, Let's find out. Down, 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 Clark careened through the air, seeing visions of apocalyptic disaster after apocalyptic disaster flash before his eyes. He watched Metropolis burn down to ashes. Then the city was frozen in an icy wasteland. Next, bombs peppered the streets and reduced the city to rubble, after which Brainiac descended and ripped Metropolis down brick by brick. This was Superman's nightmare, and he was face to face with the consequences of his own eventual failure. Finally, mercifully, Superman collided into a mountain with the force of a comet. He stood slowly, still staring at the ground after all he'd seen. I don't know what your nightmare stone even is, let alone where it is. Now tell me if... But Clark stopped short when he looked out over the horizon and was met with millions of empty skulls staring back at him. Lightning crackled in the distance as Superman stared horrified off into the never-ending graveyard. Where? Clark tried to speak. A dark, thunderous voice spoke out from behind him. The end of time, Superman. This is the true reason you are the man of tomorrow. Because in the future, you are the last man standing. A great and terrible angel descended on blood-red wings down to Clark. Long, sharp claws gripped a pointed scythe in its hand. The iconic red S emblem on its chest made clear who this demon was reflecting. Lightning sparked behind the creature as it spoke its dark prophecy. You will outlive everyone you have ever known. Everyone you have ever loved. Then, without warning, the angel reared back its blade and began swinging wildly at Clark. You will forget them! It screeched as the scythe whipped out, threatening to behead the Man of Steel. This is another form you're taking to scare me? Clark asked as he ducked and dodged the edge of the angel's blade. As Clark fought for his life in the dream, so too was Superman fighting to breathe as he sank further and further into the ocean's icy grasp. I am you, the Dark Angel told Clark as he effortlessly blocked the laser vision Supes had fired towards him. Created by your nightmares. I am what you keep hidden behind your smiles and values, the warped creature told Clark. I am the Man of Screams. Clark floated opposite the Man of Screams, staring down the demon in defiance. But as the two spoke, the air around them began to glow darker and darker crimson. This is hardly the first time someone has tried to use my fears against me, Clark told the creature. Then let's go deeper into your nightmare and see what we find. The thing smiled back. Clark turned to see a planet staring back at him. Though he had never lived there, he recognized it instantly. Krypton? He whispered. Witness your escape, the Man of Screams said as the two men watched a small craft lift off from the planet's surface and rocket into the depths of space. Moments later, the entire galaxy was encased with fire as Krypton exploded in a massive detonation. Clark and his nightmare demon flew after the escape pod as it tore its way through the void of space. Look, the nightmare told Clark. Innocent. Totally unaware of your true role in the universe. Glancing into the pod, Clark saw himself as an infant, smiling and blissfully ignorant to the fiery hellscape the baby had just escaped. What are you talking about? Clark asked, still struggling to get to the bottom of how to escape this horrible dream realm. As they watched, the Kryptonian escape pod began descending down on a nearby planet, Earth. You are not your adopted world's savior, the nightmare continued as the pod flew out of sight and towards the surface below. You are a bullet, fired in Earth's direction, the demon said. Suddenly, the Man of Screams brought down his terrible scythe and ripped the entire Earth in two. Blood spilled from both halves of the dying planet as Clark was sent tumbling off into space by the impact. Blood and gore floated across the void of space as the Man of Screams instantly was back at Clark's throat. You never escaped Krypton's death, he sneered at Clark, who struggled to pull his claws off. It followed you. Finally, Superman managed to bring a fist around and slam the Man of Screams across his skeletal jaw. Your future only has two paths, Kal-El, the angel promised Clark as it scratched at him viciously. Devastation or solitude. Still, Clark's physical body sank deeper and deeper into the depths. But suddenly, something darting through the water scooped up Superman from his descent. In his mind, Clark still battled against his inner demon. No matter what, in the end, you will be alone. And suddenly, the Man of Screams was gone, vanished into thin air. Clark floated, holding the creature's gnarled scythe in his hands, when he heard a faint voice penetrate his dreams. Cal? Supergirl, translucid and distressed, stared down at Clark from behind him. Cal? She yelled. Hey! Kara? Clark let out, clearly just as surprised to see his cousin as she was to see him. Realizing Superman could hear her, Kara began pulling back her fist and letting loose at some kind of invisible barrier, keeping the two Kryptonians apart. Slam! The force field nearly buckled at the impact of Kara's punch. "Come on," she prayed as she reeled back for another strike. This time, whatever was standing in Kara's way shattered in earnest, sending her flying out the other side towards her cousin. "Kara, are you real?" Clark couldn't help but ask as he held the exhausted Supergirl in his arms. "Are you?" Kara shot back, pointing to the giant scythe Superman was wielding. "Someone has trapped us all inside our nightmares," Superman told her. "If you and I are here, that means our friends and family are too. We need to find them, and then find Insomnia and put a stop to this." Seeing his cousin has reignited Superman's determination and chased away all the fear he'd been barraged with while stuck inside his nightmare. Kara looked up at him with eyes that told him that she'd been through a dreamscape just as harrowing. "I was trapped inside my nightmares," she told him, "but it was just too much. So I started to punch my way out and made it into yours, but I had to just keep running." Clark looked at his cousin, wondering what would possibly have scared Supergirl into turning tail and fleeing. "From what?" he asked. Kara pointed behind Clark's back. "Them," she said gravely. As Clark watched in disbelief, dozens of zombie Supergirls began pouring out from the portal that Kara had managed to punch between her dreams and Clark's. They screamed and cried as they tore their way through the rip between dreams and headed straight for Clark and Kara. The two Kryptonian cousins braced themselves for the incoming horrors as they watched the zombies claw their way into this new nightmare. "Just remember, cousin," Clark told Supergirl, "it's all a dream." But as he said it, a sleeping Superman mumbled those same words to himself, sleeping soundly on a soft bed of sand. Someone had dragged Clark out from the treacherous depths of the ocean to the safety of a secluded beach. Clark slumbered soundly as a voice spoke up from across the sand. "Superman's not waking up," it said. A second voice answered, "Same with everyone else on this beach. What are these landlubbers up to now?" A third voice now scolded the second. "Don't use pirate talk, darling. It's tacky. The real question is, why are we unaffected?" Quickly, the crosstalk was silenced by a bold, commanding, regal tone that rose above the others. "We will uncover the truth, my love. I rule over 80% of this world. Better than its king to save it." Looking down at Superman's sleeping form, Aquaman and his entire family stared down with unease, unsure of what could have so completely taken out the Man of Steel. One thing was for sure, though. Aquaman and his allies would not rest until the world was safe from the danger posed by Insomnia. Superman is no stranger to nightmares. Just look at what happened when he faced Brainiac.